In modern life, people often live in a constant stream of thoughts, worries, and expectations. The mind runs back to the past with regrets or rushes toward the future with plans and anxieties. Amid these currents of thinking, we rarely truly pause to feel the moment that is unfolding, and within that constant hurry, the heart gradually becomes tired. It becomes covered by layers of emotions that have not been understood, sorrows that have not been seen, and longings that have never been heard. Perhaps the strangest thing about human beings is that we can travel very far in the outer world, yet rarely step into the inner world of our own selves. We learn how to achieve success, how to protect ourselves, how to compete and prove our worth, but very rarely does anyone teach us how to sit quietly with ourselves, how to listen to the rhythm of our own hearts, or how to look deeply into the emotions that silently move within the mind. Because of this, many people live their entire lives without truly understanding their own minds. They feel restless, but do not know why. They feel empty even though life appears full. They search for happiness everywhere, but that happiness is often fragile and short-lived. When joy disappears, sadness returns like an old companion they cannot avoid. Yet within the wisdom of meditation and the profound teachings of Buddhism, there is a path that is very simple but incredibly powerful. This path does not require people to escape from life, nor does it demand that the outside world be changed. It simply invites us to return to ourselves. That path is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a distant concept or a complicated technique. It is simply the ability to be fully present in each moment. When we breathe and know that we are breathing, when we walk and truly feel each step, when an emotion arises and we recognize it without rushing to judge it. At first glance, this may seem very simple, but within that simplicity lies a deeply transformative power. Because when mindfulness appears, the mind begins to become clear. The thoughts that once carried us everywhere slowly begin to slow down. The emotions that once controlled us start to be seen clearly, and within that seeing, something remarkable happens. We begin to understand ourselves. This understanding does not come from theory, nor from thinking more. It arises from quiet observation. When we look into our minds with gentleness and patience, we realize that much of the suffering in life does not come from external circumstances, but from the way our minds react to those circumstances. A single word can become pain if the mind clings to it. A memory can become a burden if we repeatedly live inside it. A fear can grow larger when the mind constantly feeds it with imagination. But when mindfulness appears, we begin to see the true nature of things. Thoughts are just thoughts, emotions are just emotions. They come and go like clouds drifting across the vast sky of consciousness. And when we no longer identify ourselves with those clouds, the sky within the mind begins to open. This is the moment when transformation begins. Mindfulness not only makes the mind more peaceful, but it also softens the human heart. When we truly become present, we begin to recognize our own pain with compassion instead of judgment. And when we learn how to be gentle with ourselves, we naturally become gentler with the world. Many conflicts in life arise because people do not understand their own emotions. When angry, we react. When hurt, we defend ourselves. When afraid, we try to control everything. But mindfulness creates a space between emotion and reaction. Within that space, wisdom can appear. Instead of reacting immediately, we begin to look more deeply. We realize that behind anger there may be sadness, behind defensiveness there may be fear, and behind closed hearts there may be a heart longing to be understood. When this happens, the human heart begins to change. We no longer see the world only through quick judgments. Instead, we begin to see through understanding. And that understanding opens the door to compassion. Mindfulness helps us see that everyone carries their own stories, their own pain, and their own struggles that others cannot see. When we realize this, the heart naturally becomes more open. The transformation of the heart does not happen in a dramatic moment. It unfolds quietly, like the sunrise slowly spreading across the sky. At first it is only a small ray of awareness, but over time that light becomes clearer, warmer, and eventually fills the entire mind. Mindfulness teaches us how to slow down and truly experience life. It helps us recognize the beauty in very ordinary things, a deep breath, a gentle breeze, or the stillness of an early morning. When the mind is no longer pulled by the past and the future, the heart begins to feel the life that is present in each moment. And within those simple moments, a deep peace slowly begins to grow. It is not a loud joy or a fleeting excitement. It is a quiet peace, like the calm surface of a lake reflecting the sky. And when the heart becomes that still, human beings begin to live in a completely different way, not with haste, but with awareness, not with fear, but with understanding, not with closure, but with an open heart. That is the profound power of mindfulness. It does not only change the way we think, it changes the way we experience life, and more deeply, it gently yet powerfully transforms the very heart of a human being. When people begin to practice mindfulness, change does not happen immediately like a miracle. It begins very quietly, like a seed planted in the soil. At first, no one sees anything different. Life continues with its familiar worries, familiar emotions, and thoughts that keep flowing through the mind. But beneath that surface, a process of transformation has quietly begun. Mindfulness first helps us recognize something we often overlooked before. Our minds have never truly stopped. They are like a river that never ceases to flow, carrying countless images, memories, assumptions, and imaginations. Without mindfulness, people are usually swept away by that current without realizing it. A small thought can lead to hundreds of other thoughts. A passing emotion can turn into a storm in the mind. But when mindfulness appears, we begin to stand on the shore of that river instead of being carried away by it. We begin to see that thoughts are not ourselves. They are simply phenomena that arise and disappear. Some thoughts come from distant memories. Some thoughts come from fears about the future. But they all share one thing in common. They are always changing. This simple realization brings a very deep sense of freedom, because in the past, many people believe that they were their thoughts. When the mind said, "I am not good enough," they believed it was the truth. When the mind said, "I will fail," they lived in fear. When the mind said, "This life is too difficult," they felt trapped. But mindfulness teaches us to see those thoughts like clouds passing across the sky. A cloud may be big or small, bright or dark, but it is not the sky. The sky is always greater. And in the same way, the deeper nature of the human mind is always greater than any thought that appears within it. As this understanding gradually grows, the human heart begins to feel lighter. The burdens we once carried for many years slowly began to loosen, not because life becomes perfect, but because the way we see life has changed. Mindfulness also helps us look deeply into our emotions. In everyday life, when an uncomfortable emotion appears, the natural reaction of human beings is to avoid it or resist it. When we feel sad, we try to find something to forget it. When we feel anxious, we try to control everything. When we feel angry, we want to react immediately. But mindfulness teaches a completely different path. Instead of running away from emotions, we learn how to stay with them. When sadness appears, we simply recognize this is sadness. When anxiety appears, we recognize this is anxiety. When anger appears, we recognize this is anger. This awareness is not meant to suppress the emotion, nor to feed it. It is simply the light of awareness shining on what is happening inside. And the strange thing is that when an emotion is seen clearly and without judgment, it begins to change on its own. Anger no longer burns as strongly as before. Sadness no longer feels as heavy. Anxiety gradually becomes lighter. Just like when a dark room opens its door to sunlight, the darkness does not need to be pushed away. It disappears on its own. Mindfulness is that light. Over time, the light of mindfulness begins to shine deeper into the layers of the mind. We begin to recognize psychological habits that have followed us for many years. Some reactions were formed in childhood. Some fears were accumulated from painful experiences in the past. Some ways of thinking have been repeated so many times that we believed they were our true nature. But when we observe them with mindfulness, we begin to see that all of these things are simply patterns formed over time, and anything that has been formed can change. This is the point where the transformation of the heart becomes clearer. When people begin to understand themselves, compassion naturally appears. In the past, we may have been very harsh with ourselves. We blamed ourselves for mistakes in the past. We felt ashamed of our weaknesses. We compared ourselves with others and felt that we were not good enough. But mindfulness helps us look at ourselves with different eyes. We begin to see that we are also just human beings learning how to live, trying to understand life, carrying wounds that sometimes even we ourselves do not recognize. When we understand that, harshness slowly turns into compassion, and when the heart learns how to feel compassion for itself, it also expands toward others. We begin to realize that the people around us are also going through similar struggles. The person we once felt angry may be carrying pain we do not know about. The person we once judged may be trying their best to overcome their own difficulties. This realization changes the way we see the world. Instead of reacting with criticism, we begin to respond with understanding. Instead of holding tightly to resentment, we learn how to let go. Instead of closing the heart, we begin to open it. This is the profound transformation that mindfulness brings. It does not only help the mind become quieter, it makes the heart become larger. A heart nurtured by mindfulness is no longer controlled by fear or craving. It becomes steady yet very gentle. It can face difficulties without being swept away by despair. It can feel the joy of life without clinging to it. And in that state, human beings begin to live with a very deep freedom. Not freedom because everything in life becomes perfect, but freedom because the heart has learned how to remain peaceful amid all the changes of life. When people begin to walk on the path of mindfulness, they gradually realize that the true transformation of life does not come from changing external circumstances, but from an awakening within the mind. The world may still be full of changes, difficulties may still appear at any time, and life will continue to move according to its own laws. But when the heart has been nourished by mindfulness, the way we move through all of these things becomes completely different. A person who lives without awareness often feels carried away by life. When things go well, they feel happy. When things become difficult, they fall into worrying or despair. Their mind is like a small leaf on the surface of water, carried everywhere by the current of circumstances without being able to choose its own direction. But when mindfulness gradually becomes part of life, people begin to find a deep support within themselves. They no longer live entirely through unconscious reactions. Instead, each moment becomes an opportunity to look more deeply, understand more clearly, and choose to respond with awareness. It is within that awareness that the human heart is transformed. The heart is no longer closed by old wounds. The heart is no longer controlled by invisible fears. The heart is no longer bound by attachment to fragile things. Instead, it becomes open, peaceful, and full of understanding. A heart nourished by mindfulness has the ability to look at life with deep calmness. When joy arrives, it appreciates the joy without trying to hold on to it. When difficulties appear, it faces them without losing its inner balance. And when everything changes, it understands that change is the natural nature of life. This understanding brings a very special kind of freedom. It is not the freedom to control the world, but the freedom from the bondage of unconscious reactions. It is the freedom to live with a clear mind and an open heart. And the remarkable thing is that when a heart changes, the way a person appears in the world also changes. A person who lives in mindfulness carries a very different energy. Their peace does not need to be proven with words. It is felt through the way they listened, through the way they walk, through the way they face every situation in life. Their presence is like a still lake in the middle of a restless world, and sometimes simply being near such a person can help others begin to feel their own hearts becoming calmer. This is the quiet power of mindfulness. It not only changes one individual, but also spreads peace to those around them. When a person becomes more aware, they bring more understanding into their relationships. They react less in anger, are less drawn into meaningless conflicts, and know how to listen to others with greater sincerity. Each small action like this may seem insignificant, but over time they create a profound change in the way people connect with one another. A more peaceful world does not begin with great changes. It begins with the transformation of each heart. When many people learn to live with mindfulness, they bring more understanding into life, more compassion, and more calmness. These things are like gentle waves spreading across the surface of water, gradually expanding and touching others. Therefore, the journey of mindfulness is not only a personal journey, it is a gift that each person can bring to the world. Every time you pause to take a deep breath and recognize the present moment, you are creating a space of peace. Every time you choose understanding instead of judgment, you are expanding your heart, and every time you return to awareness, you are helping make this world a little more gentle. Perhaps this transformation does not happen immediately. There may still be days when the mind remains restless, days when emotions still feel heavy. But what matters is not becoming perfect. What matters is continuing to return. Return to the breath, return to awareness, return to your own awakened heart. Because each time you return in this way, the seed of mindfulness is nourished a little more, and over time, that seed will grow into a great tree of wisdom and compassion. If the reflections in this video have touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Each idea, each experience you share may become inspiration for someone else who's on the journey of seeking peace within the soul. And if you would like to continue exploring stories and profound lessons about mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhist wisdom, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support not only helps the channel grow, but also helps messages of awareness and peace reach more people. Because in a world full of constant change, sometimes what people need most is not more information or more success. What they need is a moment to pause, a deep breath, and a heart quiet enough to realize that true peace always begins from within.